Namaste, everyone. Hari Om.
Hare
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Here we are on the second day of this 5 evening series. Guidance from Bhagavad Gita and light on emotional intelligence. And this evening here in India, we are going to take up especially the first area of skills as regards EQ. Our whole question is, can we enhance our emotional quotient? Can Bhagavad Gita help us? And we are saying Gita can indeed help. And here are the pointers that the sacred text gives to us. So, this emotional self-awareness is one of the four skill areas as we had pointed out yesterday in the first lecture. So, emotional quotient is, just to give a quick summary, not just one skill here or one skill there. Actually, it is the combination of a number of skills, number of competences. So different people among us may be good in some areas but might be handicapped in some other areas. Therefore, we must try to enhance all these four areas of skills. These four can then be further divided into 25, 30, or even 40 skills of different flavors. But to quickly tell you again, the four are being aware of our emotions very clearly, being able to distinguish one emotion from another that rises in us. Secondly, having understood what is happening within us, managing it. That's the second area of skills. Third is recognizing or identifying specific emotions in others. That could be a single individual or a group, or why not, a whole country. Now, if we understand others' emotions clearly, then only it will be possible for us to try to manage those emotions, respond to them properly, respond to the emotions in others in such a way that we arrive finally at a win-win solution. We don't want to rise at their expense, nor do we want to lose, letting them just go further up and maybe make us miserable. So the four components are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. With this um, in mind, we shall now try to uh, share some slides so that the points come to you in a systematic manner. Just a moment. Ah, give me half a minute. Here it is. Slides on day 2. this gets a little confusing sometimes. I hope the slide is visible and I continue to be audible.
The slide is not visible yet, Swamiji.
Really, look at that. Let, let me go back to and then share screen. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Oh, there is one button, share. I didn't press that. How about now?
Yes, Swamiji, we can.
All right. So this evening's emphasis is, as the bottom line shows, emotional self-awareness. And I already attempted a quick review of the 4 areas, and this graphic picture which we shared yesterday also shows those 4 areas. The top 2 boxes are about ourselves, therefore they are self-management and self-awareness. Self-awareness and self-management. And then at the bottom we have social awareness and relationship management. So before proceeding further, I would once more say, once more meaning, we had mentioned this yesterday, self-awareness is a foundational skill. Unless we are self-aware, all the other skills, all the other domains of skills would be handicapped. It's not possible for us to manage an emotion when we don't know what emotion it is. And when we are not positioned properly with regard to our emotions, where is the question of dealing with others' emotions in a better way? Therefore, we must realize how important being attentive to the movement of thought is in our life. All right, with this, we will consider the details of self-awareness. By the way, a little picture here is a bit humorous. This guy is looking at his own shadow, which of course has got a lateral inversion too. And like that character called Pinocchio, the nose of his shadow is so long. As most of you know, Pinocchio is a character in some comic strips where every time he says or he tells a lie, his nose gets a little longer. Therefore, this picture is not just for humor. In proper attention that we give to ourselves, who knows, we may discover a Pinocchio whose physical nose may not be going taller and taller, but whose life might be marked by lack of transparency. We might have imagined for long how honest we are, and no one is as good as us in integrity. But in paying better attention to our own thoughts, words, and actions, manasa vacha karmana, as the expression in Sanskrit goes, we realize, oh, we are not as good as we thought we were. That is how I say there could be a Pinocchio waiting to be discovered or caught within us. So, what does self-awareness mean? Suppose somebody has high self-awareness. Can you say who cares? You can't. If somebody has high self-awareness, as various authors tell us, then that person clearly knows not only just emotions, going by the emotions that he, or for once I say, or she, going by that understanding of emotions, he knows what makes him happy, what makes him dejected, where he is good at and where he feels like fish out of water. What motivates him? What satisfies him? All this one is able to find out. And as the last bullet shows here, When we have high self-awareness, we are well in advance clear which people push our buttons. What buttons? The buttons could be buttons that make us very happy, as well as some other buttons which turn us off. Some buttons are triggered, sending us to cloud nine, and some other buttons are triggered in such a way that we feel like leaving the place. So, emotional self awareness means we clearly know where we are. And a whole lot of things go wrong in our life because we are not sure. Should I be here or should I quit? Should I continue in this work or take up another work? Should I continue my conversation with this bunch of people who have come to see me, or in a polite and nice way take leave of them, help them go and attend to some other work? It is said rightly in management, or for that matter in so many contexts of life, that right decisions at the right time make a big difference. To stay on or to quit, to take up something or to keep a distance from it. And that could be people or that could be situations. A whole lot of us waste day after day in staying at wrong places. We could be right people at wrong places, as the expression goes. Right man at the wrong job. Or sometimes it could be a wrong man at the right job too. All these mismatches can take place. But how do we know that there is a mismatch? Friends, that is where self awareness comes in. We are very clear that this is not my cup of tea. I am making myself also miserable, and people are also not getting benefited, and so on. So we must know our emotions. Get to know your emotions, says this graphic here, and these emotions are pointers to whether we have positioned ourselves properly or not. To use a word from Bhagavad Gita itself, all through the Gita, Sri Krishna exhorts us, cautions us, and emphasizes that we got to be in our swadharma. Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. We read the Gita, but many a time, not for days or weeks or months, for years, we are struggling with some paradharma. Why does that happen? Why do we find ourselves in places or in scenarios or in company where we don't belong really? Because there is no awareness. Sometimes it is so bad that even when some good friend tells us, hey, what are you doing here? Why are you wasting your time here? We don't like that person's opinion. We become very defensive. And such negative thoughts come in inside us. If this guy is telling me to leave, that is one more reason for me not to leave. When he shuts his mouth, I will consider leaving this place, etc. We become so defensive. Alas, all this is because of poor self awareness. Now, having said that, if you ask me at this point, tell us, Swamiji, which chapter in Bhagavad Gita covers this topic of emotional intelligence to maximum extent? I would, without blinking, without moving my eyelids, say it is chapter 14. In chapter 14, the behavior of human beings is explained in relatively gross ways. Entire Bhagavad Gita throws light on human personality and the errors we commit, as well as certain right things we do at times. But in other chapters, they are philosophical terms. They are on a deeper level. Everywhere something can be described in very concrete and gross ways that anyone can figure out what it is, and things can be described in a technical language, in a certain jargon that belongs to a special subject. My favorite example is rainbow. You ask somebody, what is a rainbow? The simple definition and description is wow, it's a beautiful arc that appears on the sky when it is raining, when there are some rains. And oh, what splendid colors! Violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And you can go for some poetry. But if you were to ask some scientist what is a rainbow, he will say, "Is there a blackboard or whiteboard here? I need a marker, and I'll show you. There is this phenomenon. There's optic phenomenon, and so on." Who is more right? The scientist is more right. He explains the whole phenomenon of the rainbow. But the earlier person described it in more tangible ways. By the other day, I saw a comic strip. A young mother is sitting with her 7-year-old daughter below a tree, and the daughter is looking at the sky and asks the mother, "Mom," as they say these days, Americanized, or Amma or Ma, "what is a cloud?" Now the daughter doesn't know that this mother of hers is an IT professional. Day in and day out, she is with machines. And the mother gives some definition. Oh, the cloud is a way of data storage, and it could be located physically anywhere, but your data will be safe over there. Some such definition. The child, 7-year-old child, is totally baffled. And the mother doesn't even look at the sky. The mother is holding the child and answering, "What is a cloud?" Definition given is from internet technology, information technology. So I said already, it is the 14th chapter, which is a treat to all students of psychology, all students of human behavior. Maximum light on behavioral patterns. When we go by Satya and avoid Asatya, how do we behave? Or when we embrace falsehood, when we embrace himsa, violence, these values are mentioned in other chapters. But how we behave is described, number 1 in chapter 14 and number 2 in chapter 16, Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga. In this session, I will be drawing more from chapter 14, and right away, as the chapter 14 opens, we have Sri Krishna saying beautifully, he says, "Look, Arjuna, anything and everything, anywhere, anytime, is all a play of sattva, rajas, and tamas." When we read this chapter and hear Sri Krishna saying everything is a combination of sattva, rajas, and tamas, you and I, having studied some physics and science these days, would think of how today a scientist would say anything solid, liquid, or gaseous anywhere is made of atoms, which in turn are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. They are the building blocks. Now, coming back to our concern with emotional intelligence, I tell you, especially the subtopic that we have taken in this session, emotional self-awareness, is intimately linked with the guna called sattva. Sri Krishna says in 5th shloka, before I take up what is in this slide, Sattvam rajastama iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaha Nibadnanti mahabaho dehe dehinam avyayam. Anytime you and I take our hand to the head and say, oh, why am I like this? Why am I lazy? Why am I insensitive? Why am I not able to understand this person or that group? It is all a play of sattva, rajas, and tamas. Incidentally, if we want to have higher emotional self-awareness, we need to increase the quality of sattva in us by association with the sattvic people, by activities which are sattvic in nature. To the extent possible, we must work within our comfort zone after all. We cannot suddenly try to live like somebody else who has walked the journey quite a lot already. So within what is possible for us, we choose sattvic activities, sattvic food, sattvic engagements of the nature of reading and so on. Then we will further increase our sattva, no doubt about it. So why is or how is sattva connected with self-awareness? That is where I take the shloka 14.6. 6 says, Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakashakam anamayam. Prakashakam anamayam. See, prakashaka. Prakashaka is light. And what is awareness? Awareness is basically like light. To know, to bring something within the ambit of our knowledge. And Lord Krishna praises this Sattva Guna going a step further. He says, Anamayam. Amaya means illness, disease, some way of our being, not ourselves, some estrangement within ourselves. Whereas Niramaya or Anamaya means totally fit, very fine. We are where we belong and we are rising higher and higher. For this to happen, sattva is required. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvat prakashakam anamayam. And the second quotation I have given here is something that I am very fond of. A little later, Sri Krishna talks about in the 11th shloka in a rather figurative language. He says, Arjuna, do you know when your self-awareness is at a height? We should say, when your sattva is very high, it is as though, see, this is figurative language, don't imagine it literally. It is as though from every pore of your body, light is emanating. Light is emanating from you everywhere. Dvareshu dehe asmin prakasha upajayate. Jnanam yada tada vidyat vivruddham sattvamityutha, says Sri Krishna. So, it's not the physical light or light of physics, but this shloka has a lot of significance. It means tremendous understanding to begin with of what is going on in oneself. After all, when we bring it to our level, none of us is perfect. All of us have, some limitations. All of us have some punya in us and some papa in us. Some merit, some sin. Nobody among us is totally free of selfishness. There is selfishness. How do we know? How do we notice the selfishness in us? That is the light beam that Sri Krishna is talking about. Otherwise, A whole life can pass. A whole life can get over without our understanding what our essential problem is, leave alone solving it. I have problem of laziness, let us say, but I don't admit. Yeah. I have certain indifference to some people, to some situations, or I'm snobbish. I think much of myself, let us say. Unless we are aware, where is the question of our changing ourselves? Therefore, Sarvadvareshu, in all the gates of our personality, if light were to emanate, that means we are very aware. One of the authors, in fact, they are a pair of authors, Travis Bradbury and Jean Greaves. These people have written an essay on emotional self-awareness, and based on that, what emotional self-awareness, if it is high, boils down to is, let me rephrase it, as we said already, we are able to recognize our emotions, number one, and to use an expression that Bradbury and Greaves use, heightened emotional self-awareness helps us to cut to the core of a feeling. Cut to the core of a feeling. What does it mean? You and I, on a certain day, have a certain feeling. We feel let down by somebody. We feel, let us say, I'm just giving offhand examples. We feel somebody has backstabbed us. Somebody has deceived us. Or sometimes it could be self-blame. We feel we have been very cruel and unkind to somebody. We have not been faithful to somebody. Some kind of feeling. Deliberately I am giving some negative emotions. The feeling or emotion could be a positive emotion too. In both of them, there is much to understand. As I read this book and read the essay by the two authors on emotional quotient and especially on emotional self-awareness, I could not help but think of a close connection that emotional self-awareness has to our favorite topic, self-inquiry. Who am I? Lot of people, either through Sri Ramana Maharshi or through someone else, are excited about self-inquiry. Who am I? I will inquire who am I, and my ego will disappear, they imagine. But very soon they reach a dead end. They reach a plain wall. They are not able to proceed. They find that all their self-inquiry halts, and some of them just end up being devotees of their guru or Maharshi Ramana and so on. That fire, that glow, that light of self-inquiry is not experienced by them. That is because the sattva has not been enhanced. Let me elaborate a little more and then proceed. If you and I increase our sattva, which is an integrated process, I already mentioned food and sleep and activities and association and company and so on. Many of those things, regular Vedanta study also can be a great help. These increase the sattva. And now let me throw some light on what these authors used, knowingly or unknowingly, they used this expression. People with high emotional self-awareness can cut to the core of a feeling. From a self-inquiry point of view, it means this. When there is a certain low self-esteem or there is some resentment, whatever it is, it's a feeling. If you have greater self-awareness, you will be able to notice its structure. You will be able to notice why there is low self-esteem, what triggered it, and what is the belief in you behind looking at yourself as low. For example, one morning I am feeling low, and if I am very self aware, I might find out that there is still certain belief in me that success in life is a lot of money. That belief hasn't, let us say, left me in spite of a lot of spiritual study. And I've just heard last evening many of my former classmates are all with so much of bank balance, and I have a hard time making the two ends meet, something like that. So, without even recognizing why I am feeling low, actually there could be a certain self judgment. I haven't made enough money. Though I profess not to care for money, but in deep inside my heart, I'm just not talking of any particular person, any of us. Suppose deep in our heart we still have quite a lot of value for how much bank balance we have, then there would be a certain sadness on any morning. So, cutting to the core of a feeling is to discover by quiet watchfulness the core belief. The belief is if I am rich, I am successful. It's a questionable belief. It's not a true belief, but it is sitting inside me. Therefore, I feel morose, I feel depressed. As the person into self inquiry notices certain beliefs which are not valid anymore, that noticing will undo those beliefs. Therefore, friends, self awareness can be a means to a deep liberation. So, I complete this slide or conclude this slide making a reference to a Mahatma, a great Punyatma in his past lives, how much he had, let's say, how much sadhana he had done, we do not know, and that is Rishi Vamadeva, who is referred to in Aitareya Upanishad. Rishi Vamadeva, you may ask, was he enlightened? We say yes. At what age did he get enlightened? 17, 22, 10, 12? You read Aitareya Upanishad. Rishi Vamadeva got enlightened when he was still in his mother's womb. Purva Sanskara Balat, because of powerful past impressions, even the embryo, maybe the child growing inside, maybe 7 months, 8 months old, very thought provoking. What do you call it? We talk about prenatal education. This is a case of prenatal enlightenment. Rishi Vamadeva realized of out of that extreme self-awareness that all my thoughts of I am limited, I am no good, I am bound, I am subject to some limitations. These are all false. These are a mischief of thought. I am pure awareness. So that is what the expression by these two American authors inspired me to thinking, cutting to the core of a feeling. You feel low, you feel high, you feel this way, that way. Ask yourself, can you cut to the core of that feeling? That would become tremendous self-inquiry. Alas, we, in spite of our best intentions, slip into Rajoguna. Many a time, without our being aware, we don't know where from it comes. Suddenly, a powerful ambition or some revengefulness or wanting to teach somebody a lesson, wanting to show to everybody who we are, Rajoguna. And Sri Krishna talks about Rajoguna. Trishna Sanga Samudbhavam. Trishna Sanga. Trishna is thirst. Krishna is wanting more and more. And once we have desire, karma sanga, we never stop. Always we want to do this or that. See, emotional self-awareness is such a key. If there is high awareness, one clearly sees whether there is really need to work more or one can withdraw from work and engage more in spiritual activities. A lot of people shudder at the thought of retirement, those who are 52, 55, another 3 years, another 5 years, or another 10 years. And part of their mind says, what is this? Should I go on working like this? And part of their mind says, yeah, should, because who wants to be lazy? But another part again says, it's not about being lazy. I want to actually pursue some deeper passion, right? So, Sri Krishna says, unless you reduce your rajas, you won't be able to cut to the core of your confusions. Increase your sattva, reduce your rajas. Long back I heard a little audio of that very famous author who unfortunately died in a sad manner, who was called Acharya Rajneesh. And towards the end he changed his name to Osho. He talks of, his stories used to be very humorous. He, in that audio, a little cassette I had heard, describes about some man who was running some small business and was so attached to money. Do something, earn money. Do something, get some more money. Money, money, money. And then in all that Rajasic nature, he committed some heinous crime. He was sentenced to hanging by death. He was in jail. And another 10 days, he was going to be hanged till death. Now, another 9 days, another 8 days, and it is 3 days more for him to be hanged. Then there is a visitor. Somebody says, I badly want to meet this guy who is in the prison. And the warden, the jail authorities ask why, etc. He says, very personal, and so they allow him, but they keep an eye from a distance. So the visitor has some discussion with the prisoner, and very soon, even as the prison authorities are watching from a distance, the prisoner who is going to be hanged and this visitor are having some heated argument. And finally, the heat comes down and the prisoner gives something, rather, prisoner receives something from the visitor. He receives something from the visitor, and the visitor goes away somewhat relaxed and happy. The last part of the story you would not believe. 3 days later, when he was to be hanged, as they do, they ask him a question. Do you have any last wish? Remember, or think of it this way, it was public hanging. 1,000 people, olden days, Now also I believe in some countries they do that, public hanging, in view of the public. 1,000 people were watching, and this man is asked the question, you have any last wish? And the prisoner to be hanged says yes. And they say, all right, what is it? I just want to give a message to these 1,000 people. The authorities think, so what? Let him say anything he wants. Let him give his message. They permit him. Now the story goes from the sublime to the ridiculous. He addresses all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, bhai or bahano, whatever, I want to tell you that of all the sabun, all the soaps that you may buy in the market for taking bath, the brand Bluebird is the best. Bluebird brand of sabun is the best, he says, and says, I have made my announcement. Then he is hanged. Everybody is puzzled. What kind of wish was this? And then they see that in his pocket there were 100 rupees. And then they find out that day the heated exchange between the visitor and the prisoner was just this. The visitor was saying, look, you get an opportunity to advertise my soap and I will give you 10 rupees. Please say Bluebird Sabun is the best. And the prisoner says, for 10 rupees I will not do it. Give me 20, give me 100. And that's how the bargain went on. So Rajneesh, Osho used to explain, when there is that Trishna, he is not going to live beyond 3 days. Taking those 100 rupees, what will he do? But no, even till my last breath, if I can earn 100 rupees, so good. So he takes 100 rupees after bargaining to announce that the Bluebird soap that visitor was selling is the best. Oh, Lobha, as the second quotation goes, 12th verse of chapter 14. Ashamaha, Shama means Shanti. Ashama means no Shanti, no peace, no rest, always feeling fidgety, always restless, and thinking that an object outside can give to the person the peace that he is seeking. Really, there are spiritual exercises, yoga, pranayama, meditation, sitting simply, sitting quietly, listening to maybe some instrumental music. Sit in your balcony and look at the trees. How many of us can sit quietly like that? We'll sit in the balcony with our mobile in hand nowadays, checking messages. Alas, all this is because of rajas in us. Now, the worst quality of which we must be aware, emotional self-awareness, helps us see, hey, there is tamas in me. I got to do something about it. Tamas can be mitigated. Tamas can be driven away by physical breathing exercises and again by right choice of activities, by giving to ourselves a little push. Many a time when we are feeling lazy, all we need is just for 5 minutes we delay whatever, hitting the bed or munching something, whatever, some tamasic action. Just delay it. After 5 minutes, it won't disturb you really. So, what is tamas? Lord Krishna says in the 8th shloka of chapter 14, 8th shloka goes, Tamastu tamahatu ajnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam pramada alasya nidrabihi tan nibadnati bharat. It binds us. And many people think, lot of people think tamas means just laziness. Not really. Even in Newton's laws, the first law of inertia, if somebody has forgotten physics or somebody, a high school student, hurriedly studies inertia, he thinks inertia means something is just lying wherever it is. That is only one form of inertia. If an object is going at 1000 miles per second, high speed, but suppose it does not change, there is no acceleration, no deceleration. If it's moving at 1000 miles per second, it continues to move at that only. It is moving at 1000 miles per second, but it is inertia because it is not speeding up, adding to the speed. So likewise, in you and me too, for heaven's sake, we should not misunderstand tamas to be just laziness. Actually, if we are doing the same thing daily, if we are just repetitive, In others' eyes, we might be looking very active, but we are just mechanically repeating what we did yesterday, and there is no inner unfoldment. Then that is also tamas. That's a more dangerous kind of tamas. Yesterday also I mentioned about a young friend of mine who is so attached to computers doing things, and on some days living in Hyderabad he confesses he forgot to take bath also. What kind of attachment to this computer or whatever. So that is tamas, nidra, moha, delusion, aprakasha, doesn't understand at all. And therefore, tamas is the most dangerous quality. In fact, let me give you one more example. And these examples help us to become aware. Bhagavad Gita and commentaries on the Gita help us to notice, hey, this is exactly what was described. I am into it today. In this way, one understands. So, in Hindi, there is a saying many of you know, Mehenga ek baar royega, sasta bar bar royega. What it means is not only in the literally purchase of things, in a lot of contexts, if we go for true quality, it may pain us sometimes to go for good quality of object, good quality of something to buy, good quality of some activity. It takes a little, we have to take some trouble. But once we choose, once we go for good quality, we enjoy for a long time. Only in the beginning we suffer. Whereas sasta bar bar roega, to save a few rupees here, to save a few dollars there, you buy something cheap, and again its maintenance, its associated expenses. And what makes us settle for poor quality in varieties of contexts is tamas. That is aprakasha. If there is prakasha, we go for high quality matter, high quality objects, high quality um, activities, and so on. Friends, you will see that reflecting on descriptions of these rajas, tamas, and sattva can awaken in us greater self-awareness, because we know what to look for. If you have done a little course, offhand let me give an example, in a little bit electronic circuitry or something, then you see some machine, some equipment is not working, you know what to check for, what to look for, and then you say this is the problem. You troubleshoot, as the word goes. In order to troubleshoot our own personality, Bhagavad Gita helps in numerous ways. Now, the shloka that I recited a while ago says, even sattva binds us. Sattvam rajas tama iti gunaha prakriti sambhavaha nibadnanti. Plural is used, all the three. So if all the three, even sattva can bind us, where is the way out? Perhaps all of us are gone cases. Some Rishi Vamadeva somewhere is able to free himself from all this trouble. We have no hope. We may think like that. Friends, no. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita itself, in the same chapter towards the end, there is an advice. With that and explanation on that, I will conclude my talk for this evening, and that is, Lord Krishna advises us towards the end. You know, this 14th chapter has 27 shlokas. So in 26, last but one, in a touching manner, Sri Krishna says, Manchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Brahma is above all the three qualities, all the three attributes or gunas. But how are we to reach Brahman? Sri Krishna's loving advice is, hold me with unwavering devotion. Vyabhichara means wavering. Today attracted to this, tomorrow attracted to that. Today I want money, tomorrow I want sense pleasure, another day I want name and fame, some other day something else. That is called Vyabhichara. Mam cha yaha avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. Unwavering devotion. Then what will happen? That devotion does some sort of alchemy. Base metal turns into gold. Api chet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak sadhureva samantavyaha samyak vyavasito hi saha, says Sri Krishna in the 9th chapter. Even the worst, most wicked, most sinful person can change over to a sadhu, can become a saint. A sinner can turn into a saint by steady devotion. And that is how we have written here, all our emotional hang-ups. Some of us have rajasic hang-ups, hitting us, grabbing us 7 times a day, whatever. Some of us have tamoguna, coming and holding us by the neck. Some of us, though into sattva, have our own hesitations, our own attachment to particular sattvic activities. We don't want to leave that place. We don't want to leave that company. We are not really broken free of the cage of the three gunas. All these three, we call them emotional hang-ups, evaporate. I have used a picture of no other than Nitai and Nimai, that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his brother. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his brother, as you may know the story, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had even studied Advaita Vedanta and all Brahma Vichara. But his Purva Sanskara and something about him, he was perhaps an incarnation of some great Hari Bhakta of an earlier life. So he gave up all the logic and all the detailed scriptural study. He and his brother walked the streets of Bengal and Orissa, that eastern India. This is the picture, singing the glory of Hari. And in the personalities of Nitai and Nimai, the two brothers, miracles happened. They were embodiments of freedom, happiness and bliss, and whoever came in touch with them were all changed. The sick got cured. Those who were into bad addictions were out of those addictions, no bad habits anymore. It was an unbelievable movement, the bhakti movement of these two brothers. Likewise, we have many other examples in different parts of India and really in different parts of the world, in different other traditions. Therefore, though we may be very far from that pure devotion, we certainly cannot refute or deny the power that devotion has. Therefore, avyabhicharena bhakti yogena yaha sevate sa gunan samatitya, going beyond these three gunas. And in the light of this evening's topic, it is all about bhakti here giving us tremendous self-awareness. And one comment I want to make, that is, this Bhagavad Bhakti is not about turning bitter or turning averse to the world. Spirituality does not make us averse or indifferent. If it were so, great people like Swami Vivekananda and so on, after receiving all that wisdom, would have gone to some cave would have avoided humanity. In fact, there is a well-known, touching episode of Swami Vivekananda, I guess in United Kingdom or in United States. Some lady liked him so much. She said, Swami, I would like to marry you. And when Vivekananda said, why do you want to marry me? She said, so that we can have a wonderful, great son, a very powerful and very talented, wonderful, noble son between us. And Vivekananda, where true spirituality shines forth, he just says to her, why do you want to go roundabout? You look at me as your son. You right away have a son whom you admire. That lady was so puzzled. See, spirituality takes us out of box. It releases certain creativity within us. Some might stay aloof and bless the society in their own ways, but it is far from truth to say spirituality makes one run away from the world and so on. Rather, one is able to meet with the world with more creative and some higher approaches. Let me pause here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.